All right, welcome everybody to the Jimmy Duster Music Channel. Joining me, as always, is the incorrigible Luddite and Dr. Kelly. Tonight we've got 1983. We're going to talk about our top 5 releases from 1983, albums turning 40 years old this year. Like I was telling the gentleman before we started here, I've got fewer props for this. I only have one prop. So I'll start tonight and we'll give our number 5 and go around, and then we'll go Luddite, and then Dr. Kelly, you can finish us up each round. How's that sound?
And remember, everyone, this is entirely subjective. These are our favorites. Doesn't mean they're the best. It means there are 5 favorites.
Yeah. Well, my number 5 is the first of 4 debuts that I have on my list. Prog rock band, really kind of the album that, in my opinion, transformed prog rock from the 70s British prog rock into the 80s. I think prog took a bit of a hit in the 80s, but I'm going with Script for a Jester's Tear by Marillion. Number 5, couple highlights on the album, Garden Party, and the title track, Script for a Jester's Tear, for me. So that's my number 5.
Good pick. Am I going next?
Yep.
Okay, cool. My number 5, I hate to pick this guy again, but it's just the way it went when I went back and listened to these records. But my number 5 is going to be David Bowie, Let's Dance. Nile Rodgers did a great job on this record. It's not as creative or imaginative as Scary Monsters, which is a masterpiece, but I think this record is a 9 out of 10. The singles are undeniable on Let's Dance, Modern Love, China Girl, and of course Let's Dance. Cat People's fantastic as well. Bowie's voice is in fine form. Some great guitar work from Stevie Ray Vaughan, used in a David Bowie kind of a way, and again, great production from Nile Rodgers. This is my number 5, David Bowie, Let's Dance.
Yep. Interesting story about how Stevie got on that album too, with Jackson Browne discovering him at Montreux.
Oh, okay.
When he got booed off the stage at Montreux in '82, and but Jackson Browne was there and really thought that really enjoyed his show, and talked to David Bowie, and Bowie's like, yeah, I'll have him play on the album. And it's an interesting story if you've never read it.
Well, I know Bowie just loves all kind of music, and I know that he was a big fan of Texas blues.
Yeah,
and that's why I pulled Stevie Ray Vaughan in, I think.
Yep. More on Stevie Ray later. Shannon?
All right, so I'll pass. I have like 8 honorable mentions, and when we get to number 4, you'll understand why I pass at number 5.
Okay. So back to me for number 4. Number 4, my second debut album of 1983. The first Metallica album, Kill 'Em All. I happen to think this is my second favorite behind Ride the Lightning in their repertoire. And, of course, the highlights for me on this are Hit the Lights, Four Horsemen, and Seek and Destroy. I remember the first time I ever saw them in concert, and they played Seek and Destroy, and just became a fan of that song from that moment. Of course, that was also the Master of Puppets tour was the first time I saw them. And when they were singing Master of Puppets, I'd never heard it before. They opened for Ozzy. And I was in about the 8th, 9th row, something like that. And when they were singing the part Master, I kept thinking they were saying bastard. And I was singing right along with them the whole song.
Yeah, because I knew you went to that show in Columbus. I saw that show in L.A. So,
okay.
Yeah. And and that is a proper choice for the number 1 Metallica album. That's not subjective. That's accurate.
It's actually my number 2.
You said Ride the Lightning was number 1.
I like Kill 'Em All. I listened to it. It's an honorable.
Ride the Lightning is the best Metallica album. That's why I said you're number 1 Metallica. That's not up for debate. I said there's always three proper answers when you're talking about Metallica for their best album. It's either Kill 'Em All, Master of Puppets, or Ride the Lightning. And depending upon the day, you can argue about it. But actually, you should always end on Ride the Lightning as the best. But anyways,
Master of Puppets is my favorite, just to let you know. But
all right, Jeff, let's hear it.
yeah, you knew what's coming up. Number 4 is going to be The Creature's Feast. The most experimental record for sure. This record gets points. The Creature's Feast. This is Susie Sue and Budgie, the dynamic duo. It gets credit for doing something entirely different. Percussion and vocals only. Pin something like a tab or something on a map, and they end up in Hawaii and make this really interesting and creative and imaginative record. Incorporates exotica into the record. It's very experimental, quite avant-garde. Susie's vocals are fabulous. Budgie's percussion work is fantastic. Big fan of this record. It's not a masterpiece like Boomerang later. This is an absolute masterpiece, but it's still a great record. 3 best songs on Feast for me. Definitely the opening track, Morning Dawning. Morning Dawning, which has Susie almost singing in tongues, creating like new vocal languages. And I Miss the Girl, the single, which hit like 21 on the UK charts. It's a great single. It's the only catchy song on the record. It's a very experimental record. And also Festival of Colors. But yeah, it's a great record. Interesting, creative, and imaginative, exotic. And it's my number 4. Definitely a 9 out of 10.
Great choice. And if you're playing at home, that is 3 Susie mentions, so make sure you drink 3 times. Or, of course, the mention of Susie is already your free spot on the Jimmy Duster bingo card. So
I can only rate these records how I hear it. You know, that's what I hear.
We tease because we love.
Yeah.
I know.
And we're continually amazed at how wrong you are. But anyways, I digress.
She is the great one.
All right, Shannon, let's hear your number 4.
All right, so you got a tie at number 4. It's that's why I skipped number 5. It's a 3-way tie, and Metallica Kill 'Em All, which we already touched on, is there. I call this my metal triumvirate: Maiden's Peace of Mind and Dio's Holy Diver. They're all 3 great. I mean, early metal albums. I mean, you can go back and listen to them. They're still metal, which is kind of amazing. Heavy. Particularly Holy Diver with Rainbow in the Dark and the title track are just both great. And it's probably my second favorite Dio album, and I know that's widely regarded as his best one. But yeah, that's my tie for 4th. Is those 3? There's not much to say about them because they're all just masterpieces. And everybody knows everything about them.
Well, more on some of those later.
Yeah, I figured. That's why I figured I'd go quick.
Right now, my number 3 pick, the only non-debut on my list, Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. My favorite of the Iron Maiden albums, of course, Trooper, Flight of the Icarus, Revelations, just some standout tracks for me on there. And I got to show this as my only prop. Iron Maiden beer. We were in Cincinnati and bought this for my wife, and she begrudgingly drank it today, so I would have it as a prop for tonight.
Yeah, I didn't know how long those would last, so I have a couple unopened bottles in one of my display cases from when they were first released. I also have I think I have a couple koozies somewhere that I got at a beer festival, and I've got some of those cardboard bar things.
Have you had the Megadeth one?
No, not the Megadeth beer, no.
They had some of that there too, and I was looking for the Motorhead, but
if you want a good beer, and this is off topic, and I'll go quick, but the Slayer Rain and Blood beer, it is it's got like an orange tint to it, and it's not a high alcohol content beer. It's like 5%. It's actually quite good. It's in a black can. It's got a pentagram on it. It's pretty sweet.
All right, remember that, Michelle. Slayer Rain and Blood beer.
And it's not heavy at all. I have one upstairs if Michelle.
All right, my number 3.
Number 3.
My number 3. Am I up? Okay. I also have Peace of Mind as my number 3 by Iron Maiden. And I have the Trooper, 12-inch. This is a German 12-inch, which is really cool. This is one of the greatest anti-war songs ever written. It's fantastic. The Trooper needs no introduction, folks. It's a classic. And I also have my favorite song on the record is actually Flight of Icarus, which was my introduction to mythology. Wasn't Led Zeppelin. It was Iron Maiden. They introduced me to mythology. And Flight of Icarus is such a great song. It's one of the songs, it was probably the first song I ever heard when I was very young that actually told a story. Very epic and very different than the other hard rock metal you were hearing on the radio at the time. And I was immediately drawn to Flight of Icarus, it's probably my favorite Iron Maiden song of all time. Other great stuff on Peace of Mind, Die With Your Boots On, Quest for Fire, great record. The vintage Maiden Gallop is there, and they're starting to go in a more progressive route than they did on the first record. They're not totally into prog yet like they would be on the next record, but I really think that I think this is a much better record than Number of the Beast. I think that the addition of Nika McBrain, this is his first record with Iron Maiden, I think it really ups their total musicianship as a band. So my number 3, Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden.
I have some Nico McBrain autographed drumsticks over in the same display cabinet with my Trooper beers, if anybody cares. Actually, I'm starting to sell my stuff off, so if anybody wants to buy it, I'll sell it too.
Even your Kiss stuff?
I'm getting ready to sell off a bunch of stuff, except for stuff that's sentimental to me.
You got any Susie stuff?
God, no.
All right, just making sure. That was a joke.
All right, you, Shannon, for number 3.
All right, so you guys were very passionate about 1973. I couldn't do that show. Just couldn't do it because I was 4. I like a couple albums from 1974, but I couldn't do a show on that either because I just don't care. And I realized when I was about 13, which was 1982, that's when I started to form some of my own music. I already had Kiss albums by then, but that was it. Kiss, Sticks, Pieces of Eight, and Queen News of the World. I had a few albums, but in '82, I remember walking through a Gold Circle or something like that, and I saw Kiss's Creatures of the Night, and I had bought Kiss albums for a number of years. And I bought it, kind of reintroduced me. And then I found this new band called the Scorpions and the song No One Like You. And then really into 83, which it becomes more into my forefront in my top 2, but it is relevant to my number 3. I really realized that in 83 is when I became really, really passionate about music, just absolutely loved it. And different things stuck with me for different reasons. And it's not subjective. These are actually the accurate best coming out of my mouth. These are not subjective. So, but they mean something to my heart, which I am very sentimental when it comes to that kind of stuff. So number 3 is Bryan Adams' Cuts Like a Knife.
Wow, that's a shocker.
Love that album. Love Straight from the Heart and Cuts Like a Knife, the 2 big singles. There's a Kiss connection on Cuts Like a Knife. Don't Leave Me Lonely was co-written by Eric Carr, one of Kiss's drummers who passed away. And actually, I think that might be the worst song on the album. It's not a bad song, but just in my opinion, I don't really like it that much. But the only one, Take Me Back, and actually the final track, Bryan Adams get a ton of huge ballads, but the final track is called The Best Is Yet to Come. Still till to this day, if I had to list my top 10 favorite ballads, it would be in there because I absolutely love the lyrics of that song. Absolutely love that album. Reckless was a bigger album, but Cuts Like a Knife, I still listen to it. I didn't even realize he re-released in preparation for this. I found out he re-released Cuts Like a Knife live from Royal Albert Hall this year or something. It's good. It's all the same songs done a little bit differently, but yeah, it's just a great album. I absolutely love it. It means a lot to me.
Good choice. I hadn't even thought about that album. That's a good choice.
Probably the most surprising pick by anyone so far.
Okay, well, no surprises at number 2 for me. Back to debut albums. Shannon already talked about it. In my opinion, the greatest metal vocalist ever, Ronnie James Dio and Dio. I love Dio. Love Vivian Campbell. I just think this is a great album. Of course, Holy Diver, Rainbow in the Dark, Stand Up and Shout, the standout tracks for me on that album. Got to go with my man Dio at number 2.
It's very good.
I remember recording Rainbow in the Dark off QFM 96 and having it on cassette and burning that cassette out because of that song.
Up on top of that skyscraper.
Yeah.
I love that when he does that on that
the video. Yeah. It's not a great video, but
I love the video. He is so great in that video. Okay. I don't have my number 2. This is like the Stooges last week. When I did the Raw Power, I showed Funhouse. It's very similar situation. My number 2 is Def Leppard Pyromania, which I do not have. I have a Def Leppard High and Dry t-shirt, though, which is very cool. And I also have Def Leppard High and Dry. This is my favorite Def Leppard album, okay? High and Dry is, for me, their masterpiece, okay? Like the 3 previous records I mentioned, Pyromania from 1983, which is the one in question here, is a 9 out of 10. Like the 3 previous records I mentioned, it's a fantastic record. It takes me right back to childhood. I was at that show at the Ohio Center. I saw Crocus, who I don't really care for. Saw them open up for Def Leppard. It was a good show. It's just a record that's packed with great songs. What separates Def Leppard really from a lot of the bands that followed them in the U.S. is Def Leppard really crafts great. They're craftsmen. They craft great songs. They're not about wild solos or anything like that. It's more about the song itself, and they can craft these great songs. Photograph, terrific. Foolin', fantastic. Rock of Ages is my least favorite of the 3 singles, but there's some great deep cuts on here, especially Too Late for Love, which got all kinds of airplay on classic rock radio. I've always loved that one. Die Hard the Hunters, fantastic. And also Coming Under Fire. Really strong record. I got it in 9 out of 10 of my record. Hello?
You're still there. You cut out a little bit there.
Are you guys there?
Yep, but you're good.
Am I there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, my number 2, Def Leppard Pyromania.
That's one that I never got into, really.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. I think maybe it was just because everybody in high school was talking about it at the time, and I just felt like there was something missing from that album. But I'm with you. I love High and Dry.
High and Dry is my favorite. High and Dry is a 10 out of 10. But if we did an exercise on 1981, I don't know if we get in the top 5. You got Juju and Moving Pictures in 1981. I don't think it's going to get in the top 5. But High and Dry is a 10 out of 10. But in 1983, I'm going to put Def Leppard number 2. And that was the first show I ever went to. Yep. So I have sentimental attachment to Pyromania, and it's a great record. These guys really can craft great pop hard rock songs.
All right, Shannon, you're number 2.
Yeah, Crocus Screaming in the Night came out, or that Headhunter.
Are you guys there?
Crocus Headhunter with Screaming in the Night came out in 1983 as well. It's a good record. Regardless how you feel about Crocus. But yeah, my number 2 is Def Leppard as well. This is a weird numbering system I'm using tonight, because if I had 10 Desert Island albums, Def Leppard's Pyromania would go. I like it that much. And I particularly like the one track that Jeff did mention. That's Billy Got a Gun.
That's one of my least favorite songs.
Oh God, I love that. I love that song. And they did it when they did their residency in Vegas a few years ago. They actually did it live, and I didn't watch any of the residency. I did watch Billy's Got a Gun because I think it's a great song. But yeah, from start to finish, I think it's a great record.
And I think that
it's my favorite Def Leppard. But probably again, you're talking about an age where I was just getting into music. It came out, I think, in January of '83. It came out really early in the year, so it was right on the tail of Kiss's Creatures of Night. And then then I found the Scorpions, which also came out in '82. I don't know when, and then Def Leppard hit in January of '83, and my whole musical taste was ruined from that point forward. But yeah, I think it's a great album, and I wish Def Leppard would go out, and they'll never do it again because they have too many hits, and I understand that. But I would love for them to go out and just do nothing but stuff off their first 3 albums for an hour and a half one night. I think it would be awesome. But yeah, it's a great album, and this is actually the album I bought in 1983. It's the same one.
I think it has 7 great songs, like really great, and the 3 I don't really care for are Billy's Got a Gun, Action Not Words, and Rock of Ages. Every other song is solid gold on that record. So it's got 7 great songs.
Yeah, this thing is scratched and beat to hell because I played it so much.
Well, that's what they're for.
Great record.
Yep.
All
right. Number ones. This was a pretty easy choice for me from 1983, another debut album. Jeff talked about Stevie Ray Vaughan earlier. I'm going with Texas Flood. When I heard this album, it was just, it made me realize what the blues was. The stuff that I'd heard in Led Zeppelin and other stuff, and they kept talking about how the blues was in there, and yes, it was, but Stevie Ray was my discovery of the blues. And I didn't discover this album in 1983. Didn't discover it till a few years later, although I'd heard some radio tracks off of it. Perfect blend. You've got the instrumentals, Rude Mood, and Lenny is just a classic blues jazz. You got the title track, Texas Flood. You got Pride and Joy. And it was just when I finally heard this album, it was a life-changing album for me. So I got to go with Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, Texas Flood at number 1.
Okay, I listened to a lot of records from this year. Again, the first 4 that I mentioned are all great records. That's my 5 through 2. But the only masterpiece of the year, and it's better than I ever thought it was. It keeps getting better upon listen. It's got to be the Police Synchronicity. This is my number 1 record of the year. This is a 10 out of 10, and I do think it's their best album. I think they progressively got better the further and further they use reggae in their music. This record is pretty atmospheric. A lot of really atmospheric moments on it, especially when we get away from the well-known singles. But the well-known singles are great. You've got Wrapped Around Your Finger. That's a great song. I really love that song. King of Pain's also terrific. I don't care that much for Every Breath You Take, but the 4th single is my favorite song on the record, and that's Synchronicity 2. I love that song, and it's got like an allusion to the Loch Ness Monster. That's awesome. A dark Scottish loch, and there's a bit of a hard rock edge to that track too. It has like an atmospheric hard rock edge to it. Some of the other tracks, like Walking in My Footsteps, have really cool ambient textures, and I really like Oh My God as well. Tea in the Sahara is great. I mean, the only song on this record that I don't like is Mother. I don't know how that song got on the record, but top to bottom, like every song on the record is really, really good except for Mother. My number 1 has got to be the Police Synchronicity. It's a 10 out of 10 and the only masterpiece of the year for me.
Yeah, I'll give it up. This is Jeff's best top 5 he's ever done. He only missed on that Susie Banshean thing, whatever.
It's the Creatures.
The rest are whatever. She's in it. It doesn't matter.
Have you listened to it?
So no, the Police is a good one. So yeah, that's a good one. So now this is where Jeff loses his mind, because I actually don't think this is the best record of the year. But again, for me and what it meant to me, it's Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil.
Oh,
yeah, not yeah, and it's funny because just the intro of that, in the beginning that goes directly into Shout at the Devil. And yeah, I re-listened to it when I was walking the dog today, and it's like 35 great minutes. It's still trashy and kind of dirty, like the Too Fast for Love. Definitely their breakthrough album. When Looks to Kill hit QFM 96, it was great for me. And then, yeah, things like, yeah, Bastard and 10 Seconds to Love, Knock 'em Dead Kid. It's just a great album. I do think the Def Leppard album is better, but for what it meant to me, because then you start to teeter over. And at the end of '83, I go to my first show, which was Stray Cats. And then early '84, I go to my second show, which was Saxon and Motley Crue on the Shout at the Devil tour at Vets. And yeah, and then seeing my first hard rock metal acts live, and I was just hooked. For me, I love the album, still love it to this day, will always love it. It's about attitude, and it's got a whole bunch of that.
Can he sing? Let's just be honest here for a second.
No, he's not a good singer. I never said that.
He's one of the worst vocalists I've ever heard.
It depends. There's nights when he's good, and there's nights when he's not so good. I have friends that saw him. I have friends that saw. No. My turn. Hang on. You got your 20. I have friends that saw him in Columbus.
Crew by light years.
I have friends that saw him in Columbus, and he was so drunk that Jeff Keith from Tesla had to come out and finish his set.
Okay.
At a solo show. I've seen Vince hammered, and it's really, really bad. I've seen Vince when he seems to be on point, can actually hold it a little bit. But I'm not talking about live show. If I had to list my top 10 lead singers live, then if I had to list my top 100, Vince probably ain't making it. But that's not what's on the record.
His voice is totally flatline voice.
Yeah, nobody's arguing with you, Jeff.
No emotion. It's just flat, man.
Good showman now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never knew what you were gonna get.
Nope.
You might pick the Rat EP. I like that. You had to pick Shout at the Devil.
Are you talking about the Rat EP?
I like that.
Yeah, it's an EP. It doesn't qualify, but it did come out in 1983.
Is it Sweet Cheater? That's fantastic.
The one that I thought I was going to hear from Jim, we didn't. And also I thought we'd hear from Jim about Gary Moore.
Yeah, I missed on both of those. I forgot about both those albums. But if you're playing along, you will get a mention in my honorable mention if you're playing along with the home bingo card. One of my honorable mentions, Can't Slow Down by Lionel Richie.
Yeah.
Which to me is a fantastic album. And here's your bingo card spot for the Jimmy Duster home bingo game. Steve Lukather plays maybe his greatest guitar solo on Running with the Night. I love that album. Some others I had, here's a bit of a surprise, Mental Health by Quiet Riot. Say what you want. To me, I wore that album out. I played it. That was kind of my introduction to heavy metal, was, playing that over and over and over again. And I love that album. Bad Influence by Robert Cray, another one I have on my honorable mentions. Let's Dance that Jeff mentioned. And last one on my honorable mentions, Principle of Moments, the Robert Plant solo album.
Okay. I got a bunch of honorable mentions. I'm going to start off. I don't have the EP, but I'm going to go with the Fascination EP. This is the single, The Human League. I think Fascination is an incredible song. I love it. This is just the single. I don't have the EP. ZZ Top Eliminator. Fantastic. This takes me right back to childhood. It takes me right back to the carnies at the Ohio State Fair. Got Me Under Pressure is actually my favorite song on that record, but the singles are all great too. Duran Duran, Seven and the Ragged Tiger. This is just the single for the Reflex. Not nearly as good as Rio, but still an enjoyable listen. Cyndi Lauper, She's So Unusual. I really have a soft spot for Time After Time. It's a great song. She Bop's pretty cool. I mean, should she be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? No. But is this a really great record and a great piece of 80s pop memorabilia?
You know who wrote Time After Time?
I don't know.
I think that's one of the greatest songs ever written. I think it's a great song, great melody, nice harmonic chording going on in that song. You know who wrote that song?
I don't know.
It was the guys from Mr. Mister.
Interesting. I think it's a great song. It's definitely my favorite Cyndi Lauper song, and that whole record's good. It's like 7.5 out of 10. I enjoy it. This is just a little EP, Kraftwerk.
I'm sorry, not Mr. Mister. The Hooters, the guys from the Hooters.
Oh, the Hooters. Okay.
The Hooters. Yep.
Kraftwerk, Tour de France. Very fantastic song. Not their best, but it's really good. This is just an EP with Tour de France. Ultravox, little synth pop here for you. Reap the Wild Wind, fantastic electro synth pop. I like this record. Robert Smith and Steve Severin leave behind The Cure and Susie and the Banshees and make a neo-psychedelic record while Budgie and Susie are in Hawaii doing the Feast record, and it's called Blue Sunshine, and it has Budgie's ex-girlfriend on vocals. It's a good record with a nice slice of neo-psychedelia. Not as good as Feast, but it's good. The Rolling Stones, Undercover. Hey, hope this is okay to show. It's an underrated record. I think there's like a friction on this record between Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. Like Jagger wanted to go new wave, Richard wanted to stay in the hard rock vein. And that friction sometimes works on this record. I think this record is as good as Tattoo You or Emotional Rescue. Nowhere near as good as Some Girls, but pretty good record. And I like the title track a lot. The Eurythmics Touch, they dropped 2 in 1983. This is the better of the 2. It's got 2 great singles. Here Comes the Rain Again and Who's That Girl? I like this record a lot. The Fix, Reach the Beach. Come on, man. You got Saved by Zero on here. And also One Thing Leads to Another. Great slice of 80s new wave. The Motels, Little Robbers. This band is very much a guilty pleasure band for me. I think Suddenly Last Summer is a great pop song. I absolutely love it. Good record. And probably my first one out. This is my first one out. Midnight Star, No Parking on the Dance Floor. Again, this is a record that takes me right back to a certain time. It's got 3 great tracks on it. Freakazoid, No Parking on the Dance Floor, and also Electricity. Really, really very good record. And it's probably my first one out. No Parking on the Dance Floor. Now, some other honorable mentions that I don't have. Dio, Holy Diver for sure. That's a classic record. Also Metallica, Kill 'Em All. Sonic Youth, Confusion is Sex. Those are probably the other 3 that I would throw in there as honorable mentions that I don't have. But overall, this year for me is more about, there's a lot of really good songs and like 4 outstanding records and 1 masterpiece. I did want to mention my song of the year, and that is without any question, no doubt about it. For me, it's The Creatures Right Now, which followed up Feast. It's not on Feast. This is a jazz cover, and the best jazz cover I've ever heard. It's a Herbie Mann cover, and the vocals on this from Susie are absolutely stunning, textured, sultry. It's a very sexy song. Budgie's percussion work, as always, is fantastic. That's my song of the year. So that's all I got.
Didn't I mention like them sounding like hearing a Herbie Mann influence on one of their records I listened
on Boomerang? Yeah, it's sure. And they and actually, this was the first time they used brass. They didn't. There's no brass on Feast. It's all percussion and vocals, but they use brass on this. And I'm telling you, her voice and brass is it's an amazing combination. And that is definitely my song of the year. It is a sexy, sultry song, and the best jazz cover I've ever heard. No doubt about it.
Shannon, any honorables?
Yes. So I left out number 5 because I had a ton of honorable mentions too. Lionel Richie and ZZ Top were both there. Quiet Riot's Mental Health is there. Quiet Riot's Mental Health and Motley Shout. The 2 things that I like about that are those. I love the way those albums start. Like Quiet Riot starts with the title track Mental Health, which eventually became Bang Your Head. They changed the title of it later, but to hear that big riff at the beginning of that album was just great. And yeah, so Yeah, I had 3 of those in the honorable mention. The Fastway self-titled, their first one was really good.
Oh, good choice.
With Dave King and Fast Eddie Clark. It's Say
Oh,
What You Will
is that
song.
the one with Say What You Will?
Yeah, Say What
Oh,
You
that's
Will
a
is on
great
that
song.
album.
I didn't listen to that one. I missed that one.
Yeah, then some of the more surprising ones. Yes, 90125. I had that on cassette. I wore that cassette out. I really, really liked it at the time. I don't necessarily think I've listened to it since, but as I was looking at releases from 1983, I'm like, oh my God, I burned that cassette out. And I think it eventually melted in my Pulsar. Billy Idol's Rebel Yell came out that year. That's a good album as well.
Okay.
And then probably the biggest surprise is Madonna's self-titled came out that year, and there are two types of people. There's one type of person that when Borderline or Lucky Star comes on, they get up and they start shaking their ass, and then the other kind of person who are just liars. So that's a great, you can't take away anything she did, and especially when you look at pop stars today and all the lip syncing and dancing, and there was no lip syncing with her and all the dancing, just an extreme talent. And that was the beginning. This Borderline was on there too, I think.
Did she not lip sync at the Super Bowl?
Oh well, yeah, I'm sure she did in the modern era. Everybody does.
Prince
I'm talking about back in the day.
That was real, man.
So, yeah, and then probably the least surprising on my honorable mention is Kisses Lick It Up. Not even, it might be in top 3 of the albums with no makeup. It might not. I don't know. But again, that whole era with me, and rediscovering music and then rediscovering a new Kiss, and moving forward with them through the 80s. So, I like that album a lot. I do like that album a lot. It's funny because as you went through the pandemic, you had a lot of time to go back and listen to some stuff. And man, the Kiss Army loves A Million to One. And I've gone back and listened to that like 7, 8, 10 times. Still don't get why there's this love for this song, but it's not a bad song. It's just, I just don't get it. But there's a lot of other stuff on there, like Not for the Innocent, that I like a lot. And so, yeah, it's a good album. It's just not. It wasn't top 5 material. It didn't measure up to Motley Crue or the Creatures.
Look, I mean,
good choices, everybody. If I could make one amendment to mine, and I completely forgot about this album. I don't know how I completely forgot about it. You mentioned 2 others that I forgot about, but one of my favorite albums of all time was 1983, and it's another debut album. And when you mentioned Fastway, it made me think of it. That's the debut album from Zebra.
Yeah,
I completely
that's
forgot
kind of
about
prog,
that.
isn't it?
Who's Behind the Door?
Yep.
Just a fantastic album that I completely slipped my mind. So I'd like to add that at least to my honorable mentions. If I redid this, it would probably be in my top 5.
Yeah, I looked at a lot because, like I said, this was a year of discovery for me, and Jeff. I know Jeff knew me quite well at this age already, and just didn't have a lot of money, so you had to pick and choose what you bought. And those albums I did buy that had a big impact on me, like Yes, that eventually got burnt out in my car.
The Leppard record had an enormous impact on me. Pyromania is like one of those from childhood. That I think of that one immediately. I think of Rush Signals also. I think of 1999 by Prince. And I think going way back, I think of Blondie Auto American, which is probably the record that really got me into music, was Blondie Auto American. But that's 1980. But Def Leppard is right there in that group of albums that just,
Yeah, like I said, for me when I was young, it was Kiss. Like I said, with some of those other albums I mentioned that I bought right away, the Village People, YMCA.
Never liked that, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, I did. I mean, who are we kidding? I was a kid. I thought it was great.
I know. Yeah. But
I
still love the Safety Dance.
There's a lot of that stuff. And it just in 83, just a big transition period for me, because Yeah, like 82, 83, we would have been going into high school, Jeff, right? Is that right? Or were we still in seventh, eighth grade, something like that? Eighth grade. Were you in eighth grade or ninth grade? I don't know.
Eighth grade, I think.
Yeah.
Pyromania was eighth grade.
82, 83 would have been my senior year, so 83, 84 would have been yours.
Yeah, so there was eighth grade. That's what I thought. And that was, a tough time because I hated Rosemore, but, they're moving to high school. I spent the next year worried about getting my ass kicked, but,
Yeah, I think for me, for these last couple episodes, 1973 for me at least seemed like a more quality year. There was a lot more quality music.
Yeah, this year, 83, for me, honestly, outside of the Police record, it's really about great songs.
Yeah, 83 was a more impactful year for me.
Yeah.
It seems like records that affected me more as I was, growing into a young high schooler.
This year, 83 is really good for kind of new wave pop and metal. It's really good for those two genres, I think.
Yeah.
But it's kind of limiting in some other genres, I think.
Yeah, 84 was the year I discovered used record stores on campus and took the Coda bus downtown to buy used records because you could get like 3 for the cost of a new one. That's when I discovered the Great Wasp.
I like him more than Motley Crue, if that means anything, but not much. But
well, guys, we'll have to come up with a topic for next time.
How about best debut albums?
Best debut albums?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, see, we'd be right back on Motley Crue's Too Fast for Love. And I don't know how Jeff's going to handle that.
I'll handle it.
I'll have to slip Zebra in there next week then, or in 2 weeks from tonight. So 2 weeks from tonight, our top 5 debut albums.
And the Bon Jovi.
The Incorrigible Luddite says, please like and subscribe to the channel. And
the Bon Jovi, we can talk about the Bon Jovi self-titled album too, Jeff. Oh,
number 1 for me.
Poisons, Look What the Cat Dragged In.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Join us in 2 weeks for the top 5 debut albums.